Welcome to the Shadow the Stereotypes podcast, where our intention is to empower Black men to live extraordinary lives. You see, there's never been a shortage of Black male role models. There's only been a lack of exposure of those role models. So what we do here is we shine the light on some of the brothers who are doing some amazing things out in the world. And today I've got one of those men joining me, and his name is Rick Williams. And Rick Williams is a men's coach. And we're going to have a conversation about a wide variety of topics, primarily dealing with men's works and men's issues. So let's go ahead and get Rick into the mix. So Rick, how you doing today, bud?
I'm good, brother. How are you?
Fantastic. So you and I are part of what we'll call the men's movement. And one of the things that we do in men's work is we do a check-in. So why don't you begin by just checking in?
For me right now, like what's most present for me today is the energy for me to just action. I want to do, I'm in the place of focusing on this podcast with you, focusing on, and just basic questions that you've asked, even in prep for this, reminds me of more they have to do. In my body, I'm feeling rested and a little tired. I need to catch up on some sleep this week. I did a big circling weekend in Boulder last week that took me like almost a week to come down off that high.
Yeah, we're going to talk a little bit more about that in a moment. So before we jump into your work, I want to just kind of do a few icebreaker questions. So first of all, let's tell the audience where you're from.
I'm from DC, Washington, DC. Used to be the murder capital of the world and back in the day, growing up. But it was interesting, like all that stuff on the news, I was never in my neighborhood directly, kind of thing. Went to Duke Ellington School of the Arts there. They just had like $100 million makeover. Like Stevie Wonder donated his piano. Bradford Marcellus came to visit when I was there. Quincy Jones.
Wow.
Came there. They actually, when I was in high school, they debuted Glory. Had a private screening at the school for Glory. And that we were like one of the first people to see that Oscar-winning Denzel Washington single tear come down the eye, that kind of thing.
Classic.
Yeah.
Classic.
Now I'm in Arizona, in Phoenix, Arizona.
Okay. So tell us a little bit about your family, whatever you feel comfortable sharing.
I grew up with my mother. I grew up in Big Mon's house. I never knew my father or anyone on his side of the family. I often joke like the most steady man in my life was Mr. Mayo at Whittier Elementary. He was the gym teacher. So he was like the most steady man in my life for the beginnings. My uncle was there, but he bailed out and got out of the house full of women as soon as he could. My mother retired as a police officer. She was captain in DC. So I grew up with lots of women, which I later began to realize was a blessing because it helped me kind of be untainted and in defining my own masculinity. Not, having what I would assume a father that would, be one of those stop crying and like denying all parts of myself, not fake macho, but just really learning to be okay, settling within myself and finding, what it is for me to be masculine. I remember walking down the hallways of Rabeau Junior High School and thinking, how am I walking? Like, am I walking masculine? Am I walking this way or that way? And so it was, I was given the space to define who I was without too much negative interference.
So with that being said, name a woman who truly inspired you to become the man that you are.
It's either my mother for just giving me space. Like I'm the only child and I always felt like a connection with her, like an unspoken connection. or the many failures of dating and women that I've had that inspired more from me to be a better man, to be just to be better, to and not just like be a better sex partner, but actually be connected and be um, more present and more like just calling more of my masculine up. So to be like a combination of like probably most of the women that I know.
So how about a male role model that you look up to?
Male role model, like I said, Mr. Mayo, just by being there and being a good man, really his home. Mr. Barry at Duke Ellington was another man that I was mentored by. And now it's just coming in contact and getting to know men around me.
Okay. So name a book that has had a positive impact on your life.
I want to say Power versus Force.
Ooh, I love that book.
Yeah.
Love that.
By Dr. Hawkins. And that's a book that talks about power, the strength of power versus the perceived strength of force. Forcing your way into something is significantly less powerful than just being powerful. And the power scales that he has in those things, and the open myself up to kinesiology and the wisdom of the body. The body knows what's true and what's not true, and your body will respond weak or stay powerful depending on what you're doing, what you're coming in contact with, the questions that we are asking ourselves. It's a very powerful book that is, it sounds broad, but it's all connected together.
Yeah, beautiful. Amazing work. I absolutely love that book, and his whole consciousness scale and energy. Oh, it's just amazing.
Yeah.
Great.
It's a lot to ingest, and it's done really well.
Yes, very well. Now, what are you passionate about? What drives Rick Williams?
What drives me now is being the best man that I can, and helping inspire other men, and honestly, increasing the emotional intelligence of men, I think actually heals the world. So like weak emotional men feel threatened by women and react forcefully. Weak intelligent men resort to rape, resort to being isolated because they can't handle coming in contact with the emotions and feelings of other people around them, even though it could be subconscious on a large level. But like weak emotional men have created the Me Too era throughout history, in my opinion. And so when men begin to increase their emotional intelligence and are able to let impact the feelings of the people that are around them, the environment in general, and be able to sit with whatever is coming up, whatever they are actually feeling, and not causing that flight reaction to a woman actually being big in emotion, or a woman just being herself and not having to make herself smaller in order for you to feel comfortable, for the men that she's with to be comfortable, but actually men that can handle a full woman is really what drives me.
Nice. And that's one of the reasons why I want to bring you on the show, because we definitely need to have this conversation, especially with men of color.
Yeah.
We're going to dive a little deeper into that. But next question I want to ask is, there are some people who are pretty pessimistic about the future, while others are pretty optimistic. So where do you fall on the spectrum between optimism and pessimism for the future in general?
You know what? Let's go back to power versus force. So like, power seems, in my opinion, seems to lay dormant until needed. So only getting into politics in a little bit. So force is the supposed Muslim ban or travel ban. Power is the very next day, hundreds of thousands of people lining up and protesting at airports to shut that down. So even though it may seem like some people are trying to force their agenda, we step up and shut that down the very next day. So I'm a very optimistic person. And I tend to see beyond the focus of the media. All the focus of the media is reporting bad stuff all day long. I tend to have a feeling of the actual whole world where most people are good. Most people are not about racism or that mentality of racism. Most people are actually genuinely caring about the next person next to them. But the perception of what's repetitive seems to be what's true. And I disagree.
So you're an optimist.
Yeah.
Cool. All right. So now I want you to imagine this. I have this magic wand. And with this magic wand, you can create anything your heart desires. So if I gave you that magic wand, what would Rick Williams' life look like 20 years from now?
20 years from now, I think it will be, without the wand or not, the direction I feel like it's going right now is touching the lives of people as much as I can, teaching people how to actually see someone else and actually be seen, and the skills that it takes to receive love, to give, and also to give love in a way that actually connects with other people. So if I had to wave a magic wand in 20 years from now, more people would have skills and intelligence to actually engage with each other and let go more of the social programming that is fighting hard to not die right now.
Yeah. All right. So now I'd like to give you an opportunity to introduce Rick Williams, the professional, to the audience. So tell us a little bit about what you do.
Right now, I'm working on a project from taking couples from roommates into romance, being romantic again. So when I was married at 23, divorced at 30. And that's actually when I began to learn about relationships, being in my face about how much I did not know about myself, how much I did not know about leading a relationship or marriage. And so my purpose right now is to help people understand how easy it is to go from living as roommates to being romantic again in less than a week. That and my recent passion for men's work, hosting a new men's group in my home, and broadening that as well. Like there's programs out there like AMP, Authentic Man Program Intensive, that I want to bring here where I am in Phoenix. So that's on the agenda right now for everything professional. Is about coaching. It's about men's work.
Okay. So I have come to know that there are only two things that'll cause a man to change. One is pain, and the other is what I call divine discontent. So which of these two started you on your own personal journey of transformation?
I think both. You know, I moved out, I initiated separation, and feeling the pain that I was causing, but also how dormant and depressed I was inside, was enough pain to motivate me to learn more, to be in a better, expand into who I really wanted to be. In the marriage, I felt myself shrinking and shrinking and shrinking because I didn't know myself. I didn't know what to do. I didn't know what I was really connected to. So all those things, there was a lot of pain, and the pain I was causing, the depression that I was in, and just a gut drive to not settle and be better.
Yeah, and I know that's one of the things that as men, a lot of us don't really know how to connect with that pain. We don't even recognize the pain. And I'll speak from my own experience. When I was in my marriage, on the outside, it looked like Michael Taylor had it all together.
Yeah.
He had the house, the wife, the 2.5 kids, and by society standards, someone who was really successful. Mm-hmm. And when I first got married, if someone were to ask me if I were happy with my life, my immediate response was, oh yeah, you know? And so I was in this deep, deep state of denial because of my own unresolved emotional issues. And it wasn't until that pain got so great that I had to choose to heal some of that pain. And it was initiated by my divorce, because my former wife I came home from work one day and she looked at me and she says, I want a divorce. Mm-hmm. And internally, I also wanted it, but I wasn't courageous enough to say it. I knew there were some issues in our marriage, and actually we had tried counseling, and because of my denial, I didn't want to address my stuff, so counseling really didn't work. But my point is, for me, there came a point in my life where there was so much pain that I had two choices. One was to die.
Mm-hmm. Wow.
Now, fortunately, I've never been a drinker. I've never been an alcohol or drugs, because if I were, I know I would probably be dead. But it was my willingness to embrace that pain and say, you know what? I'm sick and tired of being sick and tired, and I want to do something different. And I gained the courage to go to therapy and begin that process of healing. And so my pain point was my divorce. And again, as I look back in retrospect, what I recognize now is that my divorce was actually the best thing that ever happened to me. Mm. I couldn't say that then, but what I recognize is my divorce was the catalyst that, number one, challenged me to heal, but it also awakened a lot of gifts and talents that I didn't even know I had, like the ability to write. I never dreamed of being a writer, but as a result of going to therapy and writing in a journal, I recognized and came to the understanding I have this gift of writing. And now I've written 6 books. As a result of that divorce, I actually learned that I'm a great communicator. So I became a public speaker. If I would have still been trapped in that marriage, I never would have uncovered those gifts.
I hear you.
So I'm a firm believer that every adversity, every challenge brings us a gift and a lesson if we're willing to look deeply enough into it. And so it's important, I think, especially as men, that we have these types of conversations, because men, if you're watching this, a lot of us when we're in pain, we don't think other people will understand our pain, as if our pain is the only pain. We all have pain. Pain is pain. And so if for whatever reason you're feeling that pain, and I believe if you're watching this video, it's no accident that you're getting this message. So if you're feeling that pain, it's your responsibility to do something about that pain. And so that's going to be your choice, to choose to do something about that pain. And we're going to be talking about a few things that hopefully will support you in dealing with that. But for now, just recognize that the three most difficult words for any man to say is, I need help.
Yeah.
So let's break that stigma right now and understand that asking for help is not a sign of weakness. Seeking support is a sure sign of strength.
Definitely.
So
Definitely.
be sure that if you're in that space right now and you've been afraid, confused, unknowing what to do, there's no shame in saying, I need help, and be willing to seek that support.
And
So,
the thing I've noticed, the belief I had to adopt for situations like that, going through the Mankind Project and all that stuff, and is that everyone wants to be authentic and connect. They're just waiting for someone else to go first.
Absolutely.
The moment, from my own experience and other people that I've known, the moment that I step up and say, I need this or need that, it just breaks a divide and actually brings me closer to the people around me.
Yeah. And so it's been said that a true leader is not someone who says, follow me. A true leader is someone who says, I'll go first. And so for the men who are watching this, I'm saying, I'll go first. And I started addressing and dealing with the emotional traumas and
Yes.
pain inside of me. So if I can go first, you can follow.
Yes.
And what we're going to be sharing today, hopefully, will give you the permission to follow in our footsteps and go on your own path and your own journey.
And be the first, and go first in your own area.
Absolutely.
In your own group.
Yeah. And so taking the lead begins with healing yourself.
Yes.
So I'm curious, Rick, how did you get involved with men's work specifically?
My own journey began, you hear a lot of people that talk about Tony Robbins and stuff like that. So that was the first real investment, like paying money to get those Personal Power 2 tapes. That just led to learning about Wayne Dyer and other people. And a friend of mine, Jeffrey Platts, who is a men's coach.
And a good friend of mine.
Oh, great. He went to AMP. He went to Red Pill. I believe he and another friend, David Henry, when we all lived in DC area, heard about Red Pill. I believe David went. And at the time, I was going to get married again. And I was like, let's let this be like a bachelor kind of party kind of thing. And went to Red Pill and just engaging there. And one of the exercises there was one of the instructors was sharing a story about losing someone that he was teaching, and the emotion that took, and he just went into his closet and just like destroyed it, like just took out all the anger and stuff like that. And he was describing how he was married to someone who could hold that energy, can take that, take him needing to emote that way and just do that. And my question, and I realized I did not have a woman like that that I was dating, and I felt I would be too big, and that kind of sparked a journey into not settling, and also not holding back who I am. And that weekend impacted me in such a strong way. First of all, there were nothing but men there the first couple of days. So men that was holding other men in regard and strong in strength was a big change for me. Was a big, it was just big. Like I've never been in a room like that, filled with men, leaders of men who were taking care of other men and calling forth more masculinity and strength in all the men there. And that's where actually I began circling that weekend as well. Well before, but in that atmosphere. And it just something, it was so high powered, high energy, and it just woke up something dormant inside of myself. And I've been practicing and practicing and practicing ever since, and wanting to be a better man for myself. You know, all the David Data stuff as well. Just that question of being a superior man. Without it being in competition, but a better man for myself. Like here with the men's group here, I want men to become the men that they admire. They become the kind of man that you already admire, but let that be you instead. You know. So yeah, and one experience that comes to mind after that experience in Red Pill, and then after AMP developed, afterwards, I volunteered. I kept coming back to volunteer over the years. And just a few years ago, like about 2 years ago, there's an exercise where we're put in a situation where we have to protect someone that we love behind us. And I probably will start crying as I tell this. That and mind you, I was there as a volunteer, but they was like, if you want to, work on something, you can participate too. So the leaders of the group become demons, and they would say and do whatever it is to get you to become ungrounded and try to, be all macho, get yourself knocked out and your person killed or raped behind you. So the practice is to energetically just be like, back off, and always have access to all of yourself, and especially from a caring place, energetically just back someone off without getting tripped into like macho BS and fighting and, putting everything that you love in jeopardy, pretty much. And I was feeling emotional about it, but I didn't know what it was about. So as my turn came, I decided that the person behind me would be my 6-year-old self.
Mm.
And I was like just pouring with tears, and the exercise itself was easy because I was connected to it. But afterwards, I realized that I was the first man to ever stand up for me. Not growing up with any fathers or, stuff like that. I was just washed with like, wow, like it really touched me and I don't know, it was a very powerful moment that changed a lot of how I felt in the past. It's like healing my own self, as a man, going back and healing myself as a boy was a very powerful experience to have.
Yeah, and important part here, and thank you for that share.
Mhm.
And I think, especially as men of color, there's this illusion, and actually in my latest book, Shattering Black Male Stereotypes, one of the illusions that I talk about is the illusion that Black men are all angry and violent. And what the media portrays is that as Black men, we aren't capable of being in touch with our vulnerability, our emotions, our sensitivity. And yet, rather than point fingers at the media, I think what we have to do, especially as men of color, is to engage in these types of conversations to let us know the importance of, as you mentioned earlier, emotional intelligence. Now, I've been doing this work for 25 years or so.
Mm-hmm.
And I know that through the workshops that I've participated in and done myself, I know that in most cases along this journey, 90% of the time that I'd be in a workshop, I'd be the only man of color there.
Yeah, yeah.
And at the beginning, I don't want to say I was uncomfortable with it because I've always been comfortable around people, but
Yeah.
I know at the very beginning, I did struggle with identity from the standpoint of being a man of color. Like, should I be with all Black people? And so I struggled with some of that at the beginning, but I have come to recognize and know fully that it's all about my humanness and it's not about my ethnicity. But I do believe that I have a responsibility as a man of color to share the insights that I've learned to support and empower men who look like me.
Mm-hmm.
So from your perspective, how difficult or challenging has it been for you as you've gone through this process as a man of color? Has that impacted you at all?
I've always been comfortable around people myself. And I kind of expect to be like the only Black guy in there sometimes. Even for the weekend, I was, as I was signing up and talking to someone over the phone that we have interacted with, not really. And so, yeah, I volunteered last time, and like I was the only Black guy. Like, oh, okay, but even before earlier we were talking about when I was talking about mindset and stuff like that. Because of the limited references growing up for like men of color, it was either being poor on Good Times or Roots, and everything. All the history was about was slavery and stuff like that. And growing up in DC, the repetitiveness of you're either be in jail or dead by 21. I had to let go of being Black, like being their version of Black, and really find the core of who I am, and without outside definition. And what that has helped my mental identity is that the concept of feeling out of place in those kind of situations is referencing I shouldn't feel comfortable being myself. So letting go of stereotypes, letting go of other people's views of who I should be, how I should act, things like that, was very powerful. And my only fear, like saying things like that out in the public, is like, other people of color saying that I don't want to be a person of color, which is, going back to that kind of like slave mentality of, no, you will be with us, you will suffer with us, kind of thing, when I never left and I never was apart, but I let go of their definition of where I should be, who I should be with, how to interact, letting go of like all white people are this, all black people are that, which really is depressing. Holding on and covering and it's like I live in Arizona. It's like wearing a fur coat outside right now when it's like 110 degrees, like all the time. But you're so used to it, you don't know that it's just a coat and you can take it off whenever you want to. Like a lot of these mentalities, a lot of these perceptions have been given to us. And I mean, everyone, white, black, whatever, that we feel like we have to live up to. And all that is not true.
Yeah.
You can walk around and find people that you really connect with, really feel brothers or sisters to, that don't look like you. You know, I find myself, you know, like you probably seen some of my Facebook posts, like I'm having to remind people, like, all white people were not slave owners back in the day. Like there were white people who built homes with pockets in there to hide slaves on the Underground Railroad. I mean, we have to have the entire picture, or we'll still be focusing narrowly on the limitations of a few people.
Sure. Yeah, and you know, it's interesting because I know. Actually, I wrote my first book back in 1994. And
Nice.
the very first chapter was titled "That's What White People Do" mentality.
Wow, yeah.
And in that chapter, I basically talked about what you just said. And it's really about us, especially as men of color, recognizing that embracing my humanness does not deny my ethnicity. It doesn't take away from my ethnicity. It simply acknowledges my humanity. And so I get a lot of pushback from Black people all the time, which is okay.
Yeah,
But what I understand and where I made my greatest shift around identity, and you mentioned Wayne Dyer earlier, and Wayne Dyer is probably one of my greatest mentors, things I learned from him. And when I was in my early 20s, I read a book by Wayne Dyer, and in the book, he said this: as a human being, you have within you the capacity to do anything any other human being has ever done. And if it hasn't been done, you can be the first.
Nice.
Now, there was something about that sentence that really resonated with me. And I remember reading it over and over and over again, and I told myself internally, this applies to me. And as a result of that sentence, I let go of my attachment to being Black.
Yes.
I didn't deny my ethnicity. I recognized that there was something deeper in me that I had access to that transcended the color of my skin. And it has made all the difference in the world for me. It's the reason why I've accomplished what I've accomplished, because I simply choose not to wear a label created by a society that doesn't have my best interest in heart, at heart.
Wow. Right. And society means, it to me, I hear both. I hear sometimes the community that we grew up in and the perception of the community outside of that. Yeah. Like the society working together in order to keep things like a status quo or at a certain energetic level, going back to Hawking's, like that, breaking that 200 level of determining what's a lie and what's not a lie. I mean, distinguishing from the truth and what's a lie, you have to reach out like over 200, I think it was.
Sure. And so again, for me, I am so comfortable in my own skin.
Yeah.
And I know who I am. I know why I'm here. And so I don't have any guilt or shame around being Black at all. I mean, I love being Black.
Yeah.
I've always seen it as an advantage personally.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I do recognize that there's still a lot of people who happen to be Black who are unwilling to embrace this idea of embracing our humanness and being human beings. And when we say things like that, it's like, oh, you don't want to say you're Black, you know? And again, it's like we're trying to deny our ethnicity, but we aren't. We're just
Yeah.
embracing our humanity, and that's where our true power comes from. So let's jump into an important part, because you participated. You've mentioned circling, and I've been in circles, and I know the power of circling. And so for the men out there who are watching this, and number one, they may have no idea what men's work is, and they, may not have done their work, if you will. Talk a little bit about what is circling and how does it work?
Great question, and thank you for sharing before too. Your similar experiences. Circling for me is a practice of being present, and presence, from my experience, is a key element of being a man, of being masculine, is being with everything what is without denying something uncomfortable. And so practicing feeling what's in my body, what my thoughts are, where my attention is going, to what I am noticing in other people, what I'm noticing in the environment, in this moment only. And circling is a practice between two or more people of coming to a shared reality of what's present. So the practice of what I'm feeling in my body could be what the other person is feeling in their body. Let's talk about that and see where it goes. And coming to a shared reality where I understand, like if you and I were circling, I understand what it is to be Mike in this present moment, and he gets a feeling of where I am right now in this moment. So it is a practice of a shared reality in exploring how we're relating to each other and the environment right now.
And so for the viewers, when we talk about circling, and one of the things that I want to bring to your awareness is awareness. Because so many times we aren't fully present because we're in our heads and in our minds, and we're thinking versus feeling and experiencing. And I know this was really difficult for me, especially at the beginning, because I'm somewhat analytical and I'm always trying to figure things out in my head and rationalize everything that's going on. And actually that was the reason my relationships didn't work, because I didn't know how to be fully present emotionally. And so this process of circling is really a process of being completely aware of what you're thinking, how you're feeling, what you're experiencing, and share that with another human being. And I know that traditionally, in the Black community, if you will, we've relied so much on religion that I think we've denied the human aspect of who we are. And it isn't until we get past the belief systems and the antiquated thought processes of some old mentalities that we can truly connect to who we truly are. And so what I've experienced through circling is recognizing, and I have to first of all admit, it's taken me a while through my own healing process to, first of all, be in touch with the sensations and the energy that's moving through my body. And I think for men especially, that's a real challenging thing to do. And so I believe the first work that every man needs to do is emotional healing work, because whether we will admit it or not, we all have emotional trauma. And it could be from childhood wounds. It could be from your boss at work. I mean, we all have trauma. If you're human, you've experienced some sort of trauma. you have
And
been
not even,
victimized in some way.
in addition to trauma, you can just be one of those kids who received the stop crying or I'll give you something to cry about
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
suppressed any emotion that would come up for the rest of your life until now. You know, so it is a lot of trauma that goes on, but it's also just a lot of denying your own experience.
Yeah. And so in this work, we talk about shadows, which are the things we suppress, repress, and deny. And so when we experience, and I'll use the word trauma, which may be a little strong for some people, but it doesn't necessarily have to be, as Rick says, traumatic in terms of physical, but it could be something simply a decision that you made that something's wrong with you. See, something happens, and I believe this is what original sin really is. Something happens to us. We make a decision that there's something wrong with us, and then we create defense mechanisms to fight off the negative feelings we have as a result of that event.
Mm-hmm.
So what we're wanting to do is to bring to awareness the beliefs, the feelings, the thoughts that may be repressed that we aren't even conscious of. And I love what Carl Jung said. He said, there's no coming to consciousness without pain. People will do anything, no matter how absurd, to deny facing their own souls. You do not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious. In other words, we got to be willing to shine a light in those dark places. And those dark places generally are some events that triggered us into believing there's something wrong with us. And so the healing process is going back to that time, feeling it, experiencing it, and letting it go and releasing it. And that's the healing process in a nutshell for me.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And so what circling can do, it's a great tool for bringing awareness to what I'm thinking, what I'm feeling, what I'm experiencing, and being able to articulate or share it openly, honestly, and authentically. And
another key for me is doing that in an environment of circling, which is usually a place of not trying to judge you and not trying to coach you into something other than where you are and what you're feeling right now.
Yeah.
That part right there has been very powerful in just melting away shame, melting away the feeling of aloneness. And I really believe that our emotions need to be seen and at least validated, both the perceived positive and perceived negative. If something is there, it's because it needs to be acknowledged in some way. And everything that you are feeling is working towards your benefit in some way. So slowing down, becoming aware of what we may be avoiding, and if our body is tensing up and we're not aware of it, we just become tense and robotic after a while and wonder why. But there are wisdom in your body and in your emotions that will definitely benefit you and guide you to where you actually want to be.
Yeah, and I think you hit on a very important point, is that the key is the environment that you're in, what we call the container. Because doing this work, you have to have a container, as Rick mentioned, that's number one, it's not going to judge you, that's going to accept you and be open and allow you to be fully expressive, to be honest. You don't experience that when you go to your best friend and you try to, circle up with your best friend who has no idea what the experience is. So it has to be the proper container for this to truly be effective. So you want to make sure that you don't go hey, you know, I saw these guys on this video and they're talking about circling. Come on, guys, let's try it. It doesn't work like that. So it is a design container for this transformation. So, wow, Rick, time is flying by. So I want to wind this down. But when we start talking about circling, you have participated obviously in lots of circles, and you made a post the other day about a circling experience that really moved you. Would you be willing to share what you learned through that experience recently?
Yeah. It was, circling is based on curiosity and being curious about a person, not judging a person, not trying to find something out to judge or to shame, but genuine curiosity. And some of the concepts that you and I have talked about today, Mike, whether it's being curious about letting go of the stereotype or of being Black or a person of color, but still feeling a part of the community. If you and I were to circle and get to that place, like you and I have common ground on that. So something like that. The group was curious about my process, and these are thoughts and things that I never thought to share or felt that anyone would be curious about. And to share in that process in the safe container and feeling seen and understood was overwhelmingly powerful for me. Especially for me, when I'm the one that usually feels like I'm holding space for other people, and to receive that kind of care and attention, I was crying most of my circle, like for the hour or whatever it was. It was like just in so much release and appreciation, and felt seen, also felt appreciated. And I don't know, it was validation for the work that I want to do, that I have been doing and will continue to do. The being seen for the work that I've done on myself triggered a lot too. Being seen for, just being seen for the work that I have done on myself. One of the women that were there was a woman that I had a great interaction with back in Red Pill in 2009. And, you know, this is the first time we ever interacted with each other again. And we both were celebrating each other for where we have come. That's outside of the circle event, but yeah, it's so powerful to be held and seen without someone poking, trying to find holes, without someone trying to shame you afterwards. I mean, that's, that's powerful in itself.
So I want to close with your thoughts, sharing, feelings, whatever. One of the big pushbacks I get as a man who happens to be Black and a man who is extremely optimistic is my friends gave me a nickname. and my nickname is Michael Happy Ass Taylor. And so my friends, some of them who are very close friends of mine, and they know me now, but I know that when they first gave me the name, they thought that I was actually in denial, that there was some stuff that I didn't want to address, because they said there's no way a brother could be that damn happy all the time.
That's insane.
Well, if you really
just that concept, sorry to cut you off, just that concept is insane.
It is, isn't it? But they say, you can't be happy all the time. It's not possible. Well, if you really stop and think about it, here's a guy that spent the last 25 years doing some deep inner work. I know what it's like to be depressed, confused. I was homeless for 2 years, living in a car. So I know the other side of it. And what I know now is, as a result of the work that I've done, in all honesty, 95% of the time, I'm joyful. I'm absolutely, I mean, this feeling that I have is one of pure joy. It's deeper than happiness. And it's something that I think very few, especially men, are willing to embrace, because it's seen as almost feminine in a way, that men are so happy. What I know about you is I see you smiling and laughing all the time. And that's one of the things that actually attracted me to you, because I love seeing men of color who aren't afraid to express happiness and joy. So share just a little bit about, because I've experienced it from you, just watching some of your videos. So talk a little bit about your experience with feelings of joy.
I have similar undertone beliefs. Like I used to be a photographer for 20 years. So like shooting weddings and stuff like that. Shooting weddings and stuff like that in DC, where, you know, you have to be hard and stuff like that. I would always, dude, you got married today. Smile. Like, what are you doing? You know, you can't be hard all the time. But that's part of the social programming that I work to let go of. It's like happiness and happy people become suspicious all of a sudden. It's like, seriously? Like, I really think about what you're saying. You're keeping other people from being happy because happiness actually makes you uncomfortable. A smile that feels great in the body is weak or is feminine, or we have to change this around. Like, we have to really get in contact with who you really are. If you smile, it's not a movie. No one's going to pull out a gun and shoot you. There's layers and layers and layers upon being happy, as opposed to being hard and in the defensive all the time. All that leads to is a heart attack. And actually, it keeps you from actually connecting to yourself, to the people in your life. I like to talk about the power, the strength of vulnerability. The more vulnerable you are, number one, the less actually affects you. When you are vulnerable, you can handle, you have the capacity to handle more emotionally, more physically. And if you want a better orgasm, the more vulnerable you actually want to be. If you want to connect with your significant other, the more vulnerable you want to be, and the deeper that connection goes. So there's a lot of things that we've been taught and programmed that are actually the opposite.
Yeah, and that's part of that social programming. And
yeah,
I'm reminded of a line from A Course in Miracles that said, "It is only in my defenselessness that my security lies."
Yes.
And I love that statement, because as long as I've got these defenses up, these walls up, and I'm pretending to be somebody that I'm not, there's no security in that. That's just pain and suffering.
Yeah.
When we allow ourselves to get open, as you mentioned, to be vulnerable and to connect, that's where true intimacy comes in. That's where true connection comes in. And in the book Power versus Force, he talked about the different levels of consciousness. And for those of you who know nothing about the work, in essence, he was saying that every human being vibrates at a certain frequency. And so what he was saying was that the average human being is around 200, and the enlightened masters like Jesus, and those guys were like at 1,000.
Mm-hmm.
So the goal is to simply climb up this ladder of consciousness. So again, the average person is at 200, and most people, or a lot of people who are angry and vengeful, they're below 200, they're 50, 100, or whatever. Well, the key to the joy, I believe, is simply climbing up this ladder.
Mm-hmm.
And that comes from healing your inner stuff, getting in connection with who you truly are as a human being, and simply moving up that ladder. Well, the reason that I know I'm so joyful is that this process has allowed me to climb up this ladder. And it doesn't matter what level I'm at right now, it's just a matter of the feeling, the joy that I feel on a regular basis. And what I know is that for those of us who do the work and get to that place of joy, we unleash an infinite amount of creativity.
Mm-hmm.
This is what I believe, because creativity, in my experience, doesn't come from the brain or the intellect. It comes from the heart. And when we connect to our hearts, we connect to the true essence, the energy and intelligence that created and is still creating this amazing universe that we live in.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think our goal is to constantly climb up this consciousness ladder, this awareness ladder, and get to a point where we're letting go of the conditioning, trying to be tough, trying to hide our true emotions, and just be real and honest with how we feel. The one commitment that I made when I was during the darkest period of my life, I received a miracle. I got to share this miracle. I'm sitting up late one night because I'm too depressed to sleep. And I'm looking across the room and I'm looking at my bookshelf. And I noticed that every book on my bookshelf had something to do with getting rich and making money. And as I looked at those books, this question just popped in my head. Michael, what if you took all the energy and effort you've used in trying to get rich and simply figure out how to be happy? That question literally changed and saved my life in an instant.
Wow.
Because from that moment on, I internally knew that I simply wanted to be happy. I thought it was going to be accomplished through stuff. So I worked real hard to try to get more stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But when I committed to simply being happy, and that's when my inner process began. And it began with therapy and God knows how many workshops and seminars and so forth. But what I know is that I kept my commitment to myself of being happy. Because in my heart of hearts, in my soul, I'm at peace and I'm happy.
That's beautiful.
That's where I am. Well, Rick, I tell you, man, time flies when you're having fun. So now you're currently working on a new site and a resource for people to connect with you. Love is a skill, I believe. So tell us a little bit about that. What's coming?
The site is it's in progress right now. We'll have videos, demonstrations about love in an approach of it being a skill and not some random arrow that shoots you in your ass. And you begin to really understand your core needs. You're understanding the core needs of other people, not just your romantic partner, but everyone else. And you're beginning to see behavior as a pattern of everything we're trying to do. We're trying to be loved. Every display is an opportunity to be loved. Every time we share, every time we interact with each other, no matter how crazy it seems or angry it seems or out of place it seems, the goal is always to be is an opportunity to be loved or love someone else in those moments. So starting with the basics of communicating, there will be videos and articles about how to best communicate, going over some of the nonviolent communication and how powerful that is. practicing being present and authentic with ourselves. Sometimes authenticity, when you hear people being authentic, sometimes I see a lot of people just wanting to be angry, and that, just because that's most present for them, or it has been most suppressed in them. But that is also a layer to their true authenticity. So developing daily practices of, if you're in a relationship, daily intimacy practices. It doesn't always mean sex. It just means connecting. And just going deeper from there. Yeah, there's lots planned for it.
Fantastic. Well, want to make sure that you stay in contact with us. Let us know when you launch it, and I'll have you back on the show, and we will go into a little more detail, because this, to me, and I think you touched upon it earlier, is the most important work on the planet, which is getting men to embrace this new paradigm of masculinity that we're talking about.
Mm-hmm.
Because I believe the overwhelming majority of social ills that plague our world are the result of men trapped in old ways of being men that no longer work.
Yes.
And so Shatter the Stereotypes is a portal for men who are courageous enough to engage in this work. And although it's targeted to men of color, not limited to men of color, because this work transcends ethnicity. But I also believe that it's important that men of color have a space where men who look like them have these types of conversations. Yeah. Because I believe that there's, unfortunately, in a lot of cases, a trust factor for men that aren't comfortable because of some previous experiences, and in some cases, maybe justifiably so, untrustworthy because of their own personal experiences. So I think it's important for us to have these types of conversations. So I want to give you an opportunity, Rick, now to close with your final thoughts to the audience, and whatever comes to mind, whatever's on your heart to share, please feel free to do so now.
I feel like we said it all, really.
With that being said,
I'm grateful that you reached out and that we've had this conversation. And with very little to no prep, just what we know of each other on Facebook, honestly, and I appreciate this deep dive that we've had. And I do feel more connected to you and more of a brother in spirit, not only just a brother, but a kindred on the same journey to support each other to get our work done. So thank you.
You're very welcome. And again, there are no accidents in the perfect universe.
Exactly.
One thing we didn't talk about, and actually we need to do a whole show on this, is we're both Star Wars fans. And so we need to do a show on the depth of the hero's journey. I think really that'd be a powerful show. So we'll work that one out, because I'd love to have you on and have a conversation, because not often did I meet a brother that loves I'm a Star Wars fanatic.
Hell yeah. Oh yeah. Over the weekend, it was, Star Wars was heavy.
There you go. So that'd be a great conversation to have. So again, Rick, I just want to say thank you, man, for the man how you're showing up in the world and the work that you're doing with men to transform the planet. I acknowledge you. I honor you for what you're doing. And I'm so glad that we have had this opportunity to connect. And deep down, I've always known we would.
Me too.
And so
me too.
I'm glad that we've had this opportunity. So again, thank you for sharing your wisdom with us the last hour or so. And again, I'm appreciative to have you in the mix with the shattering stereotypes, because you are definitely shattering the stereotypes.
I appreciate you reaching out, bro. And just the title of what you're doing is brilliant. And it is, the only thing I fear is that it's too bright for a lot of people to see. And so like inching and helping each other grow up, even just to see where you are right now, just to see that the energy from which you're speaking from right now. I mean, there's a lot in there that is full of love and compassion and empathy and helping people grow.
And that's what's driving this. And no man is an island. And it takes all of us coming together to do this work and to transform the world. And I'm glad to have you on the team.
Thank you. Thank you.
So this has been another episode of Shatter the Stereotypes, where we empower Black men to live extraordinary lives. We'll see you next episode. Take care.